Sorry, you lost $60,000? That's how women talk. I just think it's so funny.
You talk to her like that, asshole.
Do you know what a
And
tariff
I'm not done
is
yet.
like as a
I'm not done yet.
concept?
I'm not done yet.
As President Trump wrote in his book, Time to Get Tough, it's simply time to get tough. War, we brought peace, we brought stability to our empire. I just saw Revenge of the Sith. Sorry. Yeah. President Trump wrote in his book, Time to Get Tough. It's time to get tough. And we have to. Your accent sounds foreign. You're not even American, are you?
And you are cinema.
We are broadcasting to the International Patriot from the University of North Texas, famously Antifa-aligned campus. You may remember, if you've read my hit pieces, I was here in the fall of 2021, and we had a little bit of a confrontation with the agents of the global libtard. And now, however, it's a much different environment. It's a much less aggrandized environment. This is peacetime. We have won. We're doing our victory lap as opposed to in the thick of it, fall 2021, 2022, when the president was out of office. He had, quote-unquote, lost the election. He was bleeding allies, bleeding donors. People were getting excited about Ron DeSantis. Not you, because you paid attention to the channel. You knew the predictions. You knew how it was all going to play out because you trusted the plan. You listened to me. So, in any case, it's 100 days since the Donald has resumed his rightful position back as the chief executive of the country. And so we're simply going to make America great again by confronting the open-minded, famously open-minded and intelligent people of the American college campus. We're going to find out if they agree, if they are capable of proving me wrong that Trump is doing great, is, I believe, what the sign says. We are making friends. I bet you've got even more than an opinion. I bet you got maybe 5 opinions.
Love you, John Doyle.
Oh, let's go. Dude, everyone here is a patriot. We hand-selected this university because we had a little confrontation with Antifa here a couple years ago. Armed, mean, worst of all. I can deal with armed, but mean, I mean, we're supposed to be civilized. But everyone here's a patriot. I've changed literally every mind. Not a soul left to even want to prove me wrong. Peace has cost us our strength. Victory has defeated us, but in terms of, making content on the internet.
I think it's funny that y'all are doing that here, though.
Why?
It's good y'all are trying to, rage bait people.
You don't think it's funny? You're mad. You took the bait. That's how women talk. I just think it's so funny.
How are you today?
Doing well, how are you?
I'm not doing too good, to be honest.
Is it the weather?
No, the weather's actually pretty great.
You're not going to say it's because of me, is it?
No.
Okay.
I do want to get some stuff off my chest, if that's okay.
You're going to trauma dump?
Hopefully it's not traumatizing for you.
My name is John, by the way.
My name's Rocky. Nice to meet you.
All right. I'm all ears.
Thank you. I thought this was a perfect opportunity because I just need to let this out.
Let's do it.
Okay. My good friend, I've been friends with her for over 5 years. She's been held in the Bluebonnet Detention Center in Texas. And that's my argument. That's why I don't think Trump is great, because one of the greatest friends I know is being held at Bluebonnet. You know how some facilities have communication apps and you can deposit money into accounts in order to communicate? The one I had was being a pain, and I wasn't able to send her a message back, deposit money into my account. And the app is telling me she's released. Well, I'm calling them. I'm like, is she home? Is she transferred to another facility? And I'm obviously, you can tell probably from my voice, I guess I'm shaking a little.
So they've illegally detained your friend, and they think through some sort of maybe clerical error or something, like she is a U.S. citizen and they have detained her and now she's just gone totally missing?
I wouldn't say she's missing. I haven't heard back from her sister.
But she is a legal citizen. She's not here illegally?
No, she is undocumented. But she works here.
Well, there's the answer to your question.
Why am I not able to get a hold of her? I think there should be a better way in order for me, her friend, to stay informed. She can't message me and give me a call, hey, this is where I'm going.
Yeah.
Her family isn't really helping either. They're scared.
Are they also undocumented?
Some of them are, yeah.
I understand why they're scared.
So she really doesn't have a lot of people. Yeah, that's why I believe Trump isn't great, because she works hard. She does great things for her community. We live in a rural area in Texas, so that's my argument.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for letting me,
understand why you feel the way that you do. I guess I would only say with, without intention of disrespect, that as President Trump wrote in his book, Time to Get Tough, it's simply time to get tough. And we have to sort of put aside these more personal considerations and look towards the national. And I would argue that the country has been negatively affected by illegal immigration, undocumented citizens, or whatever you'd like to call them. And so while I completely understand the relationship that you two have and would completely believe that this person is a productive member of society, unfortunately, her being here is illegal. It's a violation of our laws. And I don't think that we can really respect the country if we're not respecting its laws. And so unfortunately, I would have to side with the president and ICE in this case.
You know, the president doesn't respect the law.
You don't think so?
No, he's sending people without due process.
Well, due process isn't for illegal aliens. Due process is
Due
for
process is for everyone.
No, it's not.
That's what makes our country so great.
That it's for the world. It's not a country. It's global.
Do what? Repeat that question?
Well, when the founding fathers outlined due process, they were outlining it for Americans. It wasn't like the Constitution is not a document written as a guide for how to treat everybody in the world. And so, in my opinion, due process.
Okay, but they're not across the globe.
I know,
They're
they
in
made
this
the
country.
they
They're
made the
in
mistake.
America.
They shouldn't be. They're not supposed to be, though.
Well, then that's where we fundamentally disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And are you so you said you're really concerned about like national security. Let me guess, you're like a nationalist?
Yes.
You're very patriotic. You
that's
want to
the
put
one.
America first?
Absolutely.
Okay. So do you feel like, I have a question.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Do you feel like it's putting America first when this current administration wants to gut Social Security, wants to gut VA, cut off employers? I feel like that as a whole, it's different from immigration, right? So it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Because that's just where I figured we're not going to agree there. Let's jump to something maybe we can agree on.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the VA and Social Security is good for America as a whole or should be gutted?
So my personal opinion on Social Security is like, if I were king, I probably would reform it and do away with it. I don't think it was really a good idea.
I definitely agree it should be reformed.
But in 2025, I don't really think it's a priority. The way Trump is addressing Social Security, you actually may remember that he got a lot of pushback on this issue from other conservatives because all of these conservatives, whether it's Ted Cruz or whomever, were like, we have to gut Social Security, it's bad. And Trump was the one saying, we're going to leave your Social Security alone, we're not going to touch it. In terms of gutting these things, you're probably referring to Doge with Elon Musk and going in, waste, fraud, abuse, all that. I'm completely in support of that. I think that a lot of the bloat that makes these bureaucracies so inefficient and so costly is because you just have people who are there doing absolutely nothing all the time. You look at like where the wealth is concentrated in this country with like Washington, D.C., the surrounding counties are extremely wealthy. Why? What do? They run the government clearly not well. There are people who show up to work every day, or even in most cases, they don't even show up to work and they simply suck on the teat of the American taxpayer and they do absolutely nothing. And so I'm totally in support of getting in there and just cleaning that out.
I would really love some reform too, especially because of Congress and insider trading. I don't know if you've been keeping up with that recently.
From time to time.
From the tariffs, there's been Congress people.
Yeah.
It looks like they're insider trading, like Nancy Pelosi, Marjorie Greene, all of them. Right?
Hate Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, that's where we can agree on.
Let's
go. I disagree with the whole Doge thing. I definitely agree Social Security should be reformed because the promised benefits are going to run out by like 2035.
That's right.
And I hate that they raised the retirement age, but in a lot of ways to make it last, we have to raise the retirement age. Honestly, another way to really keep it together is raising taxes.
One of the things that Doge did was they went in and found that there were millions of people on the Social Security payroll who were registered as being over the age of 120.
So that's some misinformation. There is a list of people who have been on Social Security, okay? But they just keep a database of who has been on it. Those people that are 100 and whatever years old, those are just people who have been on it, who have required Social Security. That does not mean they're currently getting checks for it.
Well, I think they found that people were getting checks under those people's names, that there was money still being withdrawn from the system. It wasn't just like a matter of, a spreadsheet with names on it, and they had to go through and actually cut that, get that out of there and save that money. So the money was going somewhere, even if those people were deceased.
Do you have the source?
The World Wide Web. I don't have a binder.
World Wide Web.
Yes, I don't have a binder or anything.
Okay, me too.
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
I don't know. Pete Buttigieg, the mayor, he went on this right-wing podcast, and he spoke about it, etc. So those are just like, that's just the nitty-gritty. I appreciate you listening to me and having a conversation. I feel like we don't really agree on a lot of stuff, other than we don't like Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
really don't.
but I appreciate it. So
Yeah, thank you,
I should get going.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Hello, Patriot. Are you comfortable? You're not? Let's talk about Undertac, the best boxer briefs in the world, and I can prove it anecdotally. Designed for special forces operations in Africa's harshest terrains, it's not just underwear. It's tactical gear built for tough missions. Whether that's hiking around the world or the real challenge of the American 9-to-5, these boxer briefs are made with premium modal fabric, 50% more moisture wicking than cotton. Again, we have the science that keeps you cool, dry, and locked in. The hidden evasion and escape pocket discreetly stores critical items like a micro SD card with crypto data when it's time to sell out and go off the grid, or emergency cash for when the stakes are high. You can even pair them with the American-made merino socks or Urban Ops hoodie, built tough, keeping you comfy and mission ready, whether at the range, in the field, or relaxing on your Patriot couch. And for a limited time only, Undertac is giving you a free pair with your next purchase. So don't wait. Go to undertac.com. That's undertac.com. Use code Doyle for buy 3, get 1 free on all Undertac underwear. Your purchase helps support veteran-run groups combating human trafficking. Gear up with purpose. Support American heroes. Secure the PP. Complete the mission. When you need gear that doesn't quit, Undertac's got your 6. That's code Doyle for buy 3, get 1 buy 3, get 1 free. This offer won't last. They told me. Like, I know the window on it. So go to undertac.com or be cursed for the rest of your life by ghost pirates. Understand your position. Very epic. We continue.
John, nice to meet you.
Hey, John.
You're a student here at UNT?
Yes.
Very cool. Do you mind if I ask what you're majoring in? Or what your interests are?
My major is biology.
Okay.
I'm pre-med.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
I'm trying to be a gynecologist.
And so you have an opinion on the first 100 days of the Trump administration. You don't think it's gone very well, I'm assuming?
I mean, no.
Okay.
He literally took away the, I forgot what it was, but that thing that says like businesses can't like legally segregate. And, you know, as a black person, I kind of have a little, you know, just a slight issue with that.
Trump brought back segregation?
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I must have missed that one.
Oh, you didn't? So I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know what it was called, though? Like what I could look up to find? Or do I just Google Trump segregation?
You can look up Trump segregation,
okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, you should do that.
So how are we here together? Are we going to get in trouble then if we're...
This isn't a business. I said business. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
If I walk into a business, there's nothing stopping them from being like, this is for...
Whites only?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's bad. I
Yeah.
don't agree with that. What about the other 99 days? Do you think those were better than the day he decided to bring back segregation or no?
No. I mean, it's just like, I'm just going to state, you know, the elephant in the room, like the stock market thing.
Yeah.
Him crashing the stock market and then reversing the tariffs and then being like, up cinema! Like, no.
I did see him do that, actually. Yeah, especially with the Martin Scorsese thing. I think actually the tariffs are good. I mean, I think that the country's got to feel something, some famously concerned about the stock market, our friends on the left, I guess.
I genuinely want to know, like,
Yep.
why you find the tariffs to be a good thing. Just
Sure.
because I saw a post from this company, I forgot exactly what company it was.
Yeah.
But it was this company that said they imported their parts for $150K and they
Yeah.
had to pay $232,000 dollars in
Yeah.
tariff taxes, and they said that's more than their owners,
Yeah.
the owners of the company makes.
Well, the reason I like tariffs, and by the way, that's not like a unique opinion. Like when Trump is putting tariffs on countries, he's matching or doing basically to them what they're doing to us. Like they have tariffs on us as well. Trump is matching that or increasing that in some cases. So it's not like tariffs are some crazy thing that nobody does. I mean, this country's economy, like so many other countries, be it Britain or even Japan after the Second World War, built their wealth through tariffs, which is the practice of basically prioritizing national industry over trade. I mean, trade's obviously important, but it's the idea that we should protect our own industries and build them up because production production is what makes prosperity in any economy. And we don't make anything in this country anymore. And so even before Trump or Obama or Bush, the economy's been going down ever since. I mean, think about how hard we have to work in our generation just to get a taste of what life would have been like for our parents or grandparents. And I think that tariffs are, yeah, sure, going to hurt in the short run, but in the long run, bringing back some of that manufacturing, I think is going to be very good for normal Americans, and not just, you know, the top 5% who are really concerned about the stock market, who have their media report about the stock market. I think it'll be okay in the long run.
So can you please explain to me in like great detail how, like, what the long run is? Because all these like economists are saying that Trump is a dumbass when it comes to these tariffs. Just like, what is quite literally the point? Like, it's like the 125% tariff on China right now. What are we doing?
Well, so what I would say is, like, think about all the kids right now at this school who are majoring in economics. Where are they going to work? Who hires economists? The people who pay economists are people who work in the government. And so they'll hire economists to work at think tanks or to come on and talk for 60 seconds on Fox News or CNN. So all the famous economists that you see make a living because the people in power pay them to get on television or write articles saying what they basically want, you know, them to say. And they may believe it, but they're selected for that purpose. And so if you have economists saying, oh, this is going to tank the economy, you have plenty of economic arguments and even the economic history of this country, like I said, which would argue the opposite. Like every man on Mount Rushmore who maybe you like or don't like, they were all protectionists, from very conservative to even very liberal, like Thomas Jefferson. Even after the War of 1812, he came along and said, you know, we should prioritize national industry. And so I'm sure that they're saying that. I'm sure that on paper it makes a lot of sense. But in terms of what we see happen in reality, there are countries which were reduced to rubble. Japan, their empire collapsed after World War II. They practiced protectionism. They prioritized national industry, their automotive industry, and now they're doing better than we are in terms of exporting cars. And that was America's thing, right? I'm from Detroit originally, the Motor City. That's now in ruins, and everybody there is driving Hondas instead of Chevrolets. And Trump acknowledged that too. One of the first things he said as a presidential candidate was, when's the last time you saw a Chevrolet in Tokyo? Sort of echoing this idea that America used to make stuff, the world used to buy it. Now it's the opposite. What do we make in this country? What do we even do? We have weird email jobs. We drive for Uber. We're consultants. But nobody does like a real job. No one makes anything. It's all fake. And I think eventually that's going to crash, and it's going to hurt a lot worse than whatever's happening in the short term. And if this really were a mistake for us, all of our enemies, China, Russia, they would just be like, okay, go right ahead. But they're upset that we're doing this because they know that they've been getting a good deal. They know that they've been taking advantage of us. And finally, we have a president who's willing to say this has to stop.
Okay, no offense, but you didn't really answer my question about how, like, the tariffs are going to do it in the long run. You went on some long rant about how other countries have collapsed, and then they do tariffs, and Big Daddy Trump is going to come back and bring everything back.
Do you know what a tariff
I'm not done
is,
yet.
like, as
I'm
a
not done
concept?
yet. I'm not done yet.
Okay.
And yeah, I just really think it's interesting that you say that our economy is like super bad right now.
True.
Because it's not like Biden, we had the best bounce back from COVID in the G7. Like, I'm confused as to how that equates to our economy being bad. Especially, like, I think it's really just a correlation versus causation kind of thing. With a lot of people are just like, oh, prices up when Biden in office. Yep, that mean Biden bad.
True.
Like, I really think it's stupid. And then just another thing, just like bringing up his tax cuts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, every time the question of how are these tariffs going to bring us forward, like literally how the process of how it's going to happen, I feel like the question is always met with, well, other countries are taking advantage of us. And it's like, okay, but how are they taking advantage of us?
So in practice, what a tariff actually does is it simply taxes the import, and it incentivizes people to buy domestically and produce domestically.
But that's been proven wrong, though.
That people aren't taking those incentives?
That tariffs don't incentivize consumer buying. So, if shit's expensive, why the fuck would I want to buy shit?
Well, because you have to buy some stuff, right?
If
so where
it's
are you
expensive,
buy
I'm not buying shit. What the hell?
So what are you going to get instead? You're just not going to buy goods?
No. That is literally the process. Like, I don't understand.
Okay.
If we have 125% tariff on China, and China basically makes everything in America, and now everything's expensive, why would I be like, oh no, everything's expensive, God, I need money so I can buy? No.
Well, if people aren't buying as much as they would be, then the prices would actually go down because the demand for those things is lower than they would have been. And so the price, and also prices across the board too, have gone down since Biden anyway.
But how would they go down if the tariffs are up?
Because if the tariffs are increasing the prices and people are not buying, then eventually in order to sell those things, they would have to lower the prices of those goods in order for people to buy them. Which, I mean, what you're saying, people do pay more for those goods, that's true, but it's not like they just simply stop buying them. It's not like they stopped buying iPhones. And Apple, by the way, said that they were going to start to reorient their manufacturing. So many of these companies are already, and we've only had the tariff announcement for like a few weeks. So what has happened historically seems to be what is happening now, and I apologize if my explanation of it was incoherent, but I think that what we're seeing is basically a repetition of history, which again, it would be to the benefit of these other countries if we did not do that, which is why they are upset that we are doing that. And so I think that we simply just have to trust the plan with Trump's economic policy.
So your explanation to me is trust him.
Yeah.
No.
Fair enough.
The fuck?
I don't know how else I could explain it, but
no, I need with a president. I need plans. I need an economic long-term 4-year plan explaining how you're gonna make the economy better. Not, oh yeah, I'm gonna pressure China and then China's gonna fold and then yup, economy good. No.
Which they did, by the way. They were threatening reciprocal tariffs. They balked. All these other countries balked. So
yeah, China, Japan, and Korea are buddies right now because of America. Do you know how fucking crazy that is? That is generational trauma. Generations of shit between 3 different countries.
That's
and
right.
They came together just because because he wants to do whatever the he does that thing where he ruins everything, and then he takes it away and he's like, guess what, I'm the best. Guess what, I'm actually the bestest. Like, what the hell? Same thing with TikTok. He did the same thing with TikTok. The whole TikTok thing happened because of him, and then he brought it back, and then he was like, oh, guess what, I'm actually the savior, you guys. Like, what are we talking about right now?
It's an interesting conversation. It rings
I'm
a lot
not
of bells. I
trusting
feel like
shit.
I've
I
made
need
this
data
video
and
before.
stats.
So what makes you say that? That's what I'm very curious. So what makes you say that?
You're trying to. What about that?
Thank you very much.
I'm listening.
No, we're not. You can't take our property, actually. You're making your students look so bad right now.
I need like evidence and not, oh yeah, just trust me. What the hell? That's crazy. Do you not understand how crazy that sounds?
I guess not.
Paris. Like, I just genuinely don't understand the process of trusting Daddy Trump's gut or
Well,
whatever.
if his predictions about what companies would do in response, shifting manufacturing back to America, what countries would do in response, lowering their tariffs on us, if those have happened, why would you not think that he kind of has an idea of what's going on? If they totally said, like, you're crazy, we're keeping our tariffs, we're keeping our production offshore, then I would understand what you're saying. But if what he's predicting will happen is consistently happening, I mean...
I think it's crazy because I think this number is wrong. Forgive me. But I think it was 32 Nobel Peace Prize, like, winning economists, people in economics.
Can you fact check that? The Nobel Economists Peace Prize?
Fact check me.
Yeah.
Please.
The Nobel Prize
that supported Kamala Harris, yes.
Yeah.
They all said that Trump's tax plan was some bullshit. Like, that's what it, well, I don't know if I've been cussing, but, but, like, was some bullshit, frankly.
Yeah.
And that's just, like, I don't know, like, I feel like trusting 32 Nobel Peace Prize winning, like, economic people, like, I'm gonna put my trust in the facts. What y'all be saying, facts over feelings? Yeah.
Fair enough. That's true. All right, fair enough.
Cinema!
Fair enough.
Like,
I appreciate you proving me wrong. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and
Of course.
see if we can get some other people. My name is John. It was very nice to talk to you.
It's nice to talk to you.
Anybody want to prove me wrong? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm coming off of a sickness, so I'm like.
You're gonna be a bioweapon. You're gonna.
Yeah,
Fair
What's
enough.
your name?
John. Well,
John? Okay,
I'll do
sorry.
it.
Yeah.
I have a strong immune
Nice
system.
to meet you. I'm Bear.
Bear?
Bear, yeah, like Bear Naked.
Okay. My name is
The YouTube channel is
John
pretty
Doyle.
popular.
Well, we try our best. We're trying to be on campus here and see if we can engage in conversation about the president's first 100 days in office or
Yeah.
so. And I think he's done a fantastic job. I am a very big supporter of his, and I would be curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, like, if you could, like, define great, just so we have just so I have a better understanding of what you mean.
I think that he has made very few missteps. I think generally every possible move he could have made was good. I think he's done exceptionally well. I think he's done better than he did in his first term, better than probably any other president in my lifetime, maybe even my parents' lifetime. And so, yeah, great.
Cool. Yeah, honestly, I don't know if I'm gonna surprise you by saying this, that I completely agree that he's maybe I would like to add the caveat that he is doing great for his, he is succeeding in kind of bypassing a lot of the problems that our government has had.
Yeah.
Where I'm coming from is I'm kind of just disagreeing on the direction
Sure.
that is going. First of all, I think this isn't really a hot take, that I don't think the Democratic Party is effective in doing things. It's very establishment, and I understand.
You're one of those. You're to the left of the Democrats.
Yeah, no, I
zoom
I
out
am.
Buzz
Yeah.
Lightyear. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think that economically, I'm the first generation of people that on average are not doing better than their parents.
That's right.
And I think a lot of people are having a lot of fear and struggle. So people do want change, and Donald Trump is really doing a good job of rallying and unifying his voter base. My biggest issue, because I like it when politics are how we should distribute our taxes and general thing. I don't know if you were thinking back to your childhood and when and what the scope of politics were then. I think we've kind of shifted a little bit. And
you respect Trump's will to power. You just wish that it were leftist.
Well, I think I'm not I think that people in history I would love to kind of switch directions, and my biggest issue is, it seems like one thing that I love about American government, and one thing that I loved about our founding fathers' vision for our country, which they had a great vision. We're the longest lasting continuous government on earth. And
is that true?
Yeah, no, we're the long, there's other nations that are older than ours, a lot of European nations and Asian.
You mean the establishment of our Congress, our government?
We're the same. It's the same exact. The Constitution is the longest lasting policy that has, or the longest lasting continuous government. And I love that.
Maybe de jure, but de facto, I don't know. I think that we've had a few presidents kind of restructure it and sort of bend it to their will.
Yeah, but the Constitution has never been the Constitution has always been the mainstay. There's been federal policies that have altered the scope of it, or court cases that have interpreted it in different ways. But the biggest thing is, I think the biggest reason why that, and one thing that I love about the United States, is the checks of power that are happening, the three different branches of governments. Any branch of government accountable is quickly losing its I don't really, its efficacy. It's specifically what I'm talking about is things that Trump is doing, deporting Antonio. I'm forgetting his name. But
the Delaware man or the Maryland man?
Yeah. The Maryland man.
Right.
So I'm forgetting his name, unfortunately, but
he's an MS-13 gang member. That's kind of important.
well, yeah, but And I also heard you talking about due process, and I would love to get back to that
Sure.
a little bit later.
I don't like the courts. I think, because I kind of understand what you're saying, where you're like, it seems like the ability for the will of the average voter to be reflected through their government is diminishing. I think that's completely correct. I mean, the idea that we could ever get Congress to be accountable, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, I mean,
Congress. I just
yeah.
want to, sorry.
Their approval rating is like a single-digit percentage.
Demonetized.
And President Trump was elected. He won the popular vote this time around. He was, democratically elected, so to speak. And now, when trying when trying to execute the things which voters put him into office for, which things like mass deportations, whether you agree with that or not, voters tended to agree with that. They put him into office. That was the central point of his campaign. And now you have the courts coming out of nowhere and saying, well, actually, this is not right. And this is because, so I would disagree with the idea that checks and balances even exist in the way that we're taught in school. Like the way we're taught about it in school is like, oh, the president holds this branch accountable and this branch holds this, and then the courts hold the president accountable. That's not the way the founding fathers wanted it to be. Like if you read the Constitution and read Article 3 when it outlines the purpose of the Supreme Court, the purpose of the the purpose of the Supreme Court is supposed to be literally the Supreme Court of the nation, meaning it handles disputes that no other court could handle, disputes between states. It's higher than all of the appellate courts, things like that. Nowhere in the language of the Constitution does it even imply this concept, which we have because of Marbury versus Madison, of judicial review. This idea that the court can come in and say, actually, this policy goes against whatever, is implied by the Constitution. And so actually the biggest victories of the left in the 20th century have been because of the Supreme Court coming in and discovering these rights in the Constitution to things like contraception, abortion. In 2015, same-sex marriage, which even failed when democratically put to a vote in California in 2008, one of the most comically far-left states. Even in 2008, when put to a vote on the ballot, they said no, Prop 8, I think it was. And so the Supreme Court has been able to always very conveniently come in and swoop down and say, well, actually, we're just discovering this thing that democratically would never be popular, because the social attitudes of the country at the time would not have supported it. All of these very progressive things in the 20th century. And then when a Republican president comes in like Trump and tries to do something which actually does reflect what those voters want, once again, the Supreme Court is there to say, actually, no, this is not in the Constitution. You can't do this. So this whole concept of checks and balances and judicial review is not something that's objective. It exists as a tool for the progressive left to either enable victories that they would never have in a fair playing field or disable victories that would have been had if the playing field were fair, and like you see right now with Trump. So I agree in a sense. I think that the ability of voters to have their will reflected on the national scale is very quickly diminishing, and I think that people are going to be pretty upset about that.
My understanding of how I was taught about the Constitution is that a lot of the language, the founding fathers understood that you needed to.
So true.
One thing, the founding fathers worded the Constitution purposely vague because they wanted. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I don't think, dude. They debated. Literally down to the punctuation of that document for hours and hours and hours. I don't think it was written to be vague at all. I think we think it's vague because we redefine language and we try to figure out how to kind of circumvent what was very clearly intended to be literally the Constitution. The nation may change, the laws may change. That can be adaptable. That's why we have a Congress, and our only law ever is, not the Constitution. But I think that document was written very purposefully to be literally the guide from which we embark in establishing a nation. I think we've made it vague and opaque, but I don't think it was intended to be that way at all.
And the second thing I wanted to discuss is the Maryland man. I wish I remember his name. One thing that the Supreme in transit from Maryland to where he's at in El Salvador now, the federal courts ruled that his deportation was not constitutional, and he needed to be returned. And I think that ruling, the administration not following through, not turning around,
that was epic.
I think epic is a term that I might not use.
Right.
But I would love to hear you elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that Trump when he got back into the Oval Office, one of the first things he did was he put back the portrait of Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson famously said of the Supreme Court, they've made their ruling, now let them enforce it. It's like, yeah, you're going to extend, your jurisdiction, your rights or whatever, and pretend that somehow that's supposed to apply to a criminal illegal alien who is a member of a gang that kills Americans. Like, yeah, I'm just not going to listen, and what are you going to do about it? Cry, write about me in the press? Who cares? Like, at this point, we are trying to put America first, and so yeah, I think that was awesome. Again, for the first time in my life, seeing a leader with balls being willing to tell these people who are hall monitors and be like, no, you can't do that actually because of these words on paper. It's like, you, dude. He's going back. Thank you to President Bukele for keeping him and not sending him back. Yeah, man, I think that, again, as I told the young lady who was here, as President Trump wrote in his book, Time to Get Tough. It's time to get tough. Exactly. And we have to follow that principle into the great American century, especially if it's concerning something like a criminal illegal alien gang member. It'd be one thing if it were Meemaw, but it's not.
Yeah, so my question is, should there be any checks on the executive branch or any branch of government?
Sure, absolutely.
What do you think that would look like?
Term limits and elections themselves are a check. I mean, the president's unpopular. The people do not vote him back into office. I think that Trump is actually, you have to understand when you read the Federalist Papers, George Washington, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, these guys were in favor of like a more central state than what would have been advocated for by, guys like maybe Thomas Jefferson. And so the chief executive of the country is actually supposed to have quite a lot of power. Again, he has to work through the Congress. He is, held accountable by the voters every 4 years. But this idea that he can just get in there and, be a dictator, if not for the freaking Supreme Court, is just like not true. So yeah, I believe that there should be checks on power. Absolutely. I agree with the founders' writings on that. But I think, as I said earlier, the only checks that you really see on power are checks when it's against something that could benefit the American people. And oops, we didn't see that when it's for something that is going to harm the American people or that they would never have voted for.
So let's say that, let's just say hypothetically that you were put yourself in the shoes of maybe someone like me who has a disagreement that maybe there should have been more due process for this. And I heard you talking about due process, and I would love to get to that later.
Sure.
But let's say you were in my shoes and that happened, and you kind of felt that there was some kind of some wrong that was made.
Yeah.
Do you think that? Can you see how that would be slightly concerning to me, that one of the branches of power that is supposed to check one of the others was kind of just told like, you go ahead and like Jackson's quote, you made the law, go ahead and enforce it, and how would you feel about that?
I get that. I would only say that I think that's a tragedy, and it can be blamed on the American education system, which
what is
that reaction, like the reaction to seeing that happen as an American citizen. Somebody was in our country illegally, they were a member of a gang, and they were deported, and the Supreme Court says, no, wait, you can't, and the president says, I'm going to do it anyway. That you would sympathize more with the criminal alien and the Supreme Court than you would for the desire to see this man deported, I think is indicative of the problems in our education system, which you remember when you take U.S. history, one of the only things it focuses on, aside from World War II and slavery, is judicial review, checks and balances, which I think is to install this idea into the mind of Americans at a very young, impressionable age, so that when they see something like that, even if it is in their best interest, and even if it is not illegal, if you take the original interpretation of the Constitution, the establishment of the Supreme Court, even then, still, the vibe just seems off, and you are somehow persuaded into advocating for your own destruction as a nation. And so I totally get like why one might have that opinion. I just think that what has put that in their mind is something that is nefarious.
Okay. Yeah, so I think... and that's a totally valid point of view.
Yeah.
But I want to like kind of circle back to the rights for non-citizens, which I heard you talking about earlier, and I heard you talking about the Constitution when it came to talking about non-citizens, that I don't know if you said the Constitution doesn't apply to them or the just due process doesn't apply to them. Is that?
My understanding, frankly, would be both. I think the Constitution was written for Americans by, I mean, literally, I know that's not from the Constitution, but this idea of like, by, for, and of the people. I don't think that the Founding Fathers thought that they were writing like a, UN Declaration on Human Rights, which should be applied to the entire world. I think it was written by Americans for, literally, it says at the top of the Constitution, for ourselves and for our posterity, meaning for Americans and the children of Americans. And if someone breaks our laws and comes into the country illegally, I don't want to abuse them. I don't want to be cruel. I don't believe in that. It's majority a Christian country. I don't think anyone would want to do that. But this idea that we have to extend to them all of these privileges to prolong their stay into the country, make it easier for them to, evade deportation, I just think that's nonsense. So it's not about being cruel and being inhumane, but this idea that we have to extend to them, rights that are supposed to be for Americans, paid for by our blood, sweat, and tears, I just think is nonsensical. And I don't think they even believe that. I think it's invoked as a tool again.
Democrats?
The Democrats, okay. Yes. I think that they invoke it as a tool to just keep these people in the country.
Mm.
Like they didn't want due process for January 6th rioters, for example, which I don't know what your opinion is on that, but it's like if you want due process across the board, it's got to be across the board.
I think they did get due process, though.
There were people literally sitting in 24-hour solitary confinement. They were being abused by the prison guards in D.C. There were these rumors and these cries for help coming, and nobody gave so much as a second thought to them, even Republicans. Only Trump said, we're going to pardon these people, we're going to take care of them. Republicans were very willing to write that all off as a symptom of MAGA and go back to respectable, Republicanism with someone like Ted Cruz or something. And so, and those were Americans too. It's not even illegals. So, I'm fine with due process, but it's got to be for Americans.
From my understanding of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, whenever it was talking about due process or really any rights that you would say that U.S. citizens would have, the wording almost never is explicitly U.S. citizens. It says of the people.
Right.
So I would love to know what your definition of the people are.
Well, it's interesting. If you read a lot of texts, specifically written by Anglo-Saxons in the past 400 or 500 years, typically they will always refer to like their country as either the people or men. So like, for example, when they write all men are created equal, they don't literally mean every man in the world is created equal. They're talking about the men among themselves, men like them, descended from their culture.
So like white people?
WASPs,
WASPs.
Anglo-Saxons, not specifically just white people, but people descended from Anglo-Saxon culture who, yes, are going to be overwhelmingly white.
So white people.
Yeah, but why do you say that though?
Well, I think that, I don't think you would agree that, I think you would agree with me that slavery and the whole Atlantic slave trade was a bad thing.
Sure.
I mean, at least I hope so. But otherwise, then we wouldn't have anything to talk about. But I think that there were people justifying that whole thing. People at the time thought it was a good thing, or at least they didn't think it was a bad thing.
Right.
And I think that, those people thought that when it came to people, they only saw themselves like people from Anglo-Saxon origins as the people, and disregarded people that might have been black or brown, or even they didn't give a lot of rights to women too, and which you talked about, it was like Anglo-Saxon men.
Which I hate that, by the way. I love women. I cherish women.
Yeah. Feminists.
Let's go.
But I think that
I lost $60,000 just for Trump.
Sorry, you lost $60,000?
$60,000 to $60,000, yeah, because of my savings.
Oh, well,
Saving.
sorry about that, but my generation's got to get a piece of the pie too, so we need to bring back the manufacturing economy. I'm sorry about your stock portfolio, but it'll come back.
Sure, so you're going to support me?
Well, where's your...
Actually, I'm not coming back.
Wait, can we...
Your accent sounds foreign. You're not even American, are you?
Now you're talking to Lebanon.
Yeah, where are you from?
It's none of your business. I'm a United Citizen.
Okay, well, that's a little different from American these days.
And you are not.
Okay.
So
sorry about your money.
Like that asshole.
All right. I just got done talking about how I respect women too. That was very poor timing on my part.
Well, okay. I didn't even think that was. Sorry, that kind of took me off guard. I think that having like we were just talking about who the people are.
Yeah.
So I thought that, and you were just talking with the last person about how due process is only for U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
So, and she was a U.S. citizen, and you didn't call her American. So I would love for you to explain how that's different.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, like, we have a national identity crisis. I think Trump identified that in his first campaign, and there is not a perfect overlap between an American and a U.S. citizen anymore. And I think that is because of our immigration policy. You've actually seen the largest migration of people into this country since 1965 in the history of human movement. It's been over 60 million people, 65 million people, and that's even before the Biden administration, I would argue, opened up the border and let in another 10 or 20 million. And so this idea that you can come into the country from anywhere, and as long as you fill out and check the right boxes, that makes you just as American as somebody whose ancestors have been here for centuries. I'm insulted by that idea, frankly. And so, when a woman comes up to me and tells me that Donald Trump took $60,000 from her and she's speaking to me in an accent, I can't help but think, okay, well, what do you view my country to be? An opportunity for you personally to make money? You're older. You're not in my generation. The boomers have looted the economy, and now she comes up and expects me to, explain to her why she lost 60. First of all, Trump ran on tariffs. Everybody knew this was coming. You could have moved the money out of the way. Second of all, like I said, we have to, take care of our future and secure our economy. And I guess it got a little ugly there when I asked her where she was from. She called me an asshole. What are you going to do? But yeah, at the end of the day,
well, it kind of was an asshole thing to say, but
why? What do you think?
Well, I think that, okay, so for a long time, especially post-World War II, the United States kind of spread its message of the American dream, that that for all people you can come to America. And I know that this, is kind of contrary to what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
That, this is a place where you can come, you can make yourself better, you can leave your country because the U.S. has more opportunity. And I think that I definitely agree that if you come to the United States, you should go through the process of legal immigration, and I'm not necessarily approving of illegal immigration, but that interaction that you just had with that woman, that brings me to a point that I wanted to get to. So the whole deporting, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but the Maryland man, as we were talking about.
Yeah.
When in speeches after that, he mentioned they're gonna start deporting homegrowns as well. You heard him talk about that?
You mean people who are naturalized citizens, or?
Yeah, Well, I don't know exactly what he meant by that, but it seems like U.S. citizens or first or second generation citizens.
Sure. I mean, if people are, U.S. citizens, but they're criminals, I'm totally fine with revoking citizenship and deporting them, offering cash vouchers for repatriation. A lot of people who are here. Yeah. And so if they're criminals, it could be involuntary, but a lot of people, if you offer them a cash voucher for repatriation, they would take it and they would leave because they don't really have an allegiance to America beyond economic opportunity, as we just saw. So yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that we have way too many people in this country. I think that we were at our peak when we were around 200 million, maybe in the 1960s or so. And I think that as we've opened up the borders, both legally and illegally for the rest of the world, the country has ceased to be like it was at any state, especially at its height. But we've got a little bit of a crowd here, so I'll probably sub out, but I appreciate your time, man. It was great to talk to you. Likewise.
Detect from
any way you want it. Maybe let's see. Yeah, it should be. That should be okay.
Okay, yeah. So I had a few concerns about market manipulation and the canceling of tariffs and stuff. Right before canceling the tariffs, he tweeted out, "Now is a great time to buy," which seems a little bit like market manipulation.
Yeah.
So I just was what's your opinion on that?
If I were trying to litigate this and cause a problem, I could maybe see something there. But I also think anybody who has sort of a knowledge of Trump's negotiation strategy would have maybe seen that coming. He tends to kind of take things very far and walk it back and meet somewhere in the middle. So to be honest with you, market manipulation isn't even in the top 100 concerns I have for the country. So I totally get what you're saying. I just don't really care.
Oh.
Just to be completely honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, so, would you rather have your mom walk in on you f***ing your dog, or your dog walk in on you f***ing your mom?
Well, the problem, so it's not so much a concern about the dog's perception of the situation because it's a dog, but to do that act itself is less desirable. And I think, like, I don't know, my mom, I could probably talk my way out of it, but then it's also like the act of the dog. But then the dog's going to be dead in 7 years anyway. So, I mean, they just don't live that long. So probably the first one. What about you?
Yeah, see, the dog can't tell anyone.
What if it can do? What if it's like homeward bound or it develops the ability to? I guess I couldn't talk to people though. What kind of dog though? Because if you're saying like a Rottweiler versus like, you know, a Pomeranian, that's a very different.
Well, I have a Great Dane. So
Okay, those are larger.
Yeah.
Okay, and are you the one doing the stuff to the dog, or is the dog the one? You know.
I mean.
Because again, that changes the dynamic.
That does change the dynamic. Well, either way, I don't think my mom would be, like, if she saw it anyway. I feel like whichever way she reported it would look just as bad.
Like, I get what you're saying, but I don't know, man. Like, if I were getting molested by the dog, I think that would be harder to explain.
Yeah.
And then is this the family dog, or is this just like
the
a
family
dog?
The family
okay,
dog.
that's up. Yeah, I would choose neither if I could. I don't like that. I don't like that question. It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure talking to you.
The state of the discourse. Yeah. Sorry to break up the School of Athens there, but doing well. You're a student here?
I am, yeah.
Do you mind if I ask what your major is, what your interests are?
Biology.
Very cool.
I'm going to, hopefully I'm going to pursue a master's, but you know, I got all of my core credits done in high school. So you know, the problem is that, you know, the higher level, like 4,000 level courses, you have to take them sequentially.
Right.
And so I can't like take them all at once. So I'm still like a decent away from graduating.
So, okay, I've got my sign. I said Trump is the best person to ever breathe, and you maybe have an opinion on that. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I think that's really fucking weird that you like a politician this much. I mean,
well, he's not a politician.
I think the normal amount to like a politician is not that much.
Yeah, I agree. In the sense of the American tradition, very skeptical of authority of politicians. But you know, if you've paid attention to Trump's sort of ascent in the public eye at all, he didn't start as a politician. He was always like a businessman, a promoter, a reality TV star, and he sort of took up politics as a hobby so he claims, stop the disintegration and destruction of our country. And so you won't catch me liking any other politician. He's become a politician, and I like them because he didn't have to do that. He chose to do that to lose money, to stop living at the top of a skyscraper in Manhattan, to put his life on the line, literally, as we saw over the summer, to do right by the American people. So I agree with what you're saying in a sense, but I do make an exception for Trump because of that.
I disagreed wholeheartedly. I think that he ran into politics to gain power for himself, not to like benefit the American people anywhere. I don't think he gives two shits about the American people at all.
Well, if he were just interested in power, then why not run as a Democrat? I mean, he was a Democrat for his entire life, and if he were a Democrat president, he'd probably be more successful governing. I mean, he could ally with the Democrat Party, and the Republican Party is, you know, horrible at doing anything to stop anything, really, and he wouldn't have to face that opposition. So if it were about power, he could have just been like another Joe Biden or something, right?
Well, the difference is that it's easier to manipulate the sort of conservative right in America because you're already prone to this sort of conspiratorial, like religious thinking. Like they're very susceptible to demagogues, right? And that's what Trump is. And so, you know, you don't have this sort of internal critique that you have on the left that you do on the right. And so it's a lot easier for demagogues to, you know, sort of amass and consolidate more power on the right, which you've seen throughout history. Like every major dictator, you know, aside for like a few here and there, have been right-wing dictators.
That's very interesting. I have exactly your opinion, but then subbed out right for left. You know, just for example, like what we saw in the lead up to this election, Trump was being flanked on all sides from people supposedly in his party trying to primary him, whether Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis. You have people constantly who are in like the never Trump media who had to kind of put that away quietly and then, you know, deal with Trump. But then once it was time to go against him, they were very happy to do that to prop up an alternative, again, like DeSantis or Nikki Haley, or even in some cases Vivek Ramaswamy. So I get what you're saying in the sense of like, you know, the public wanting to just put their faith into a sort of strong man. But I think that happens, quite equally across the aisle. I mean, you had people who were literally denying, for example, and you're going to roll your eyes at me bringing this up, but the cognitive decline of Joe Biden. People on the news are saying this isn't real. It's a right-wing conspiracy theory. I had to deal with people who maybe weren't as politically involved or well-read as yourself, but who were looking me in the eyes and telling me that this guy is not declining cognitively. They were very willing to put their complete faith and trust into Joe Biden, who was, frankly, like a senile old man. Trump is also old, and maybe you think that the way he speaks is sort of silly and he rambles, but he was not showing the same signs that Biden was. So I agree with what you're saying, but I think that everybody does. I think that's the nature and one of the problems of people in democracy is they're just completely like, sheep or cattle. So.
Well, yeah, I think you definitely did have that sort of thing, like with Biden, particularly in the sort of like center-right, center-left sort of liberal sphere. You did not have that on the like anything more than like left of liberals at all.
You had Vosh. Vosh was running cover for Biden and for Kamala. He had the Joe Biden T-shirt on and everything. Vosh is about as far left as it gets. No.
No, I don't think so.
He's got it all. I mean, he calls for violence against people like me. He's got the child pornography. He was dating an ogre. He checks all the boxes.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just kind of the more like grifter sort of space that you see on the internet.
Sure.
Like, real people aren't like that.
Sure, fair enough.
And I think Vosh is, sort of I mean, I don't watch him at all, but from what I've heard from other sort of like pundits that I've, heard from is that he's more been propped up than he was like actually like a sort of organic kind of internet celebrity.
So who are some pundits then that you would look to and say you kind of align more or less with what they believe?
I don't agree with him on everything, but Hassan Piker.
Okay.
That's.
So your problem then with the first 100 days of the Trump administration seems to be that you are upset that people are allowing him to kind of, disregard accountability. You think he's becoming too all-powerful. You think that Republicans enable that kind of behavior, or what's, the problem that you have?
Oh, yeah, 100% is just just flagrant disregard for the way that our country is supposed to run. Like, we're supposed to have checks and balances. We're supposed to have,
I don't know about that.
Well, yeah, 100%. Like the whole point of like what the founders intended for America was that we would never have a king, and instead we're having Trump trying to be a king. I mean, you have Lindsey Graham on Twitter, like just the other day, saying that Trump should be the next pope. Like that's insane.
Well, yeah, you're not going to find me defending Lindsey Graham anytime soon, but I think actually that if you look at the guys who are the most influential in the framing of our Constitution, of course they rejected monarchy, but they did want the country to function as a sort of aristocratic republic. And the reason I don't agree with like this idea of checks and balances is, as I told a gentleman earlier, what you see the Supreme Court doing is, and this is hundreds of years old literally, like this idea of judicial review. Mm-hmm. If you read Article 3 of the Constitution, that language does not imply that power. I mean, the Supreme Court was established to be literally the Supreme Court, ruling on issues which other courts can't. It's the highest court dealing with, appellate courts, disputes between states. It was not supposed to be this body that was just waiting on the sideline to see something and then decide, actually, you do have the right to contraception or abortion or same-sex marriage, things which, when put to a national vote, the country would not have voted for. I mean, even in California, famously, Proposition 8 was voted down in 2008, I believe, which would have legalized same-sex marriage in that state. So it seems to be this like mechanism where when something is done that the left wants to happen, the Supreme Court can push it through, even if it's against what the people would will. But then if it's something which people voted for, Donald Trump did win this time the popular vote, like deportations, well, then the courts can come in and say, actually, no, you're not allowed to do this because judicial review or whatever. So I think that we're taught that idea in school when our minds are very young and impressionable, this idea of checks and balances. But the checks and balances are the different powers themselves of the branches. The checks are term limits, re-elections. You can wield and be a total, I guess I say I'm going to do this and then do that, but then after 4 years, people are going to vote you out of office. 2 years if you're in Congress. So this idea that like the Supreme Court exists as this entity to uniquely, check the president from doing something, I think is historical revisionism. I don't think the founders would have agreed with that, and I think it's just a weapon to be used against, what the people actually want. So I'm not threatened at all by the way Trump wields as the chief executive. I think that he's actually restoring the executive branch to be something that actually has a little bit more bite to it. which is, again, what the founders would have outlined it as having, because they were in favor of a more central government, not something that's, a theocracy or a monarchy, but something that does have a little bit of power, much less than something that was more, decentralized, like maybe some of the more liberal founding fathers would have argued for.
I think that, yeah, you definitely had some people like on the Federalist side that would have wanted a more centralized government, but all of them agreed that Congress should be the one that had most of the power, and then
that's how you guys got your
totality.
biggest victories of the 20th century. Things that, and you might not like this, but at the time, Americans were completely off-put by things because they
mean
were
like desegregation.
Things that were much more. That's an interesting idea. Things that were much more a much more religious country. Things like I said with contraception, abortion, pornography, obscenity laws, and then in 2015 with same-sex marriage. Like all of the biggest sort of crown jewels of the left as a movement have come not through putting it to a vote, though in some cases, like with the Johnson administration, that has been the case, but it's been through these court rulings. They've been very successful. And you also don't see that on the other side with conservatives being very effective with things like that. It's actually the opposite. They more or less just step back and let the left kind of do whatever they want. And then only when you've got someone like Trump who can finally start to really sink his teeth into what the country wants done, do they then come in and say, stop it, no, this is unconstitutional. So that's how I think the court functions as like an organ of power in this country.
Yeah, I fundamentally disagree. I think that it's kind of Looney Tunes conspiracy brain to think that, the left has had any sort of major political power in the United States. We don't have like a real leftist party. We have like center left, maybe at its most liberal.
Yeah, I know. That's the Hassan take. That's why,
well,
like
no,
you said earlier, that
just
center-right people were supporting Biden or center-left, like as if that's, like viewing the left as something which is yet to be actualized. I disagree completely. I think that the American left is perfectly fine with not only being successful as a political project, but imposing its will upon people. And I think you could call that left, not center-left. I think that is just like leftism.
Well, yeah, I fundamentally disagree, because you can't even have like a legitimate conversation about socialism or communism in this country because of the Cold War. Like people have been so thoroughly like anti-commie brained that you can't even have like a legitimate discussion about like any real leftist talk. I mean, like even in like more like liberal states, probably you would probably call more liberal, like the debate about like whether kids can have free school lunch is like somehow a legitimate debate.
Yeah, I would just say that you're completely right that we view communism to be radioactive because of that like Cold War nostalgia or conditioning, but we still have like the attitudes and the sentiment, though they are just framed in different ways. Like things like equality of outcome, redistribution of wealth, centralization. Who was it? Heilbronner, I think, wrote in maybe the LA Times or Wall Street Journal in the 90s that like environmentalism as a political project would be like a sufficient replacement for complete socialism, things like that. So you have sort of the fruits of it, which I think are very healthy in the country, even if they do not identify themselves as, communism. Like the most you'll get is, oh, I'm a democratic socialist, but they would never, be so explicit as to say, yes, we are the Communist Party, we are the Workers' Party, even if they, appeal to working class Americans. But I still think that like the fruits of the ideology are basically what's like running the country right now. Total gay race communism.
So like what sort of like policy do you think is like this uber like leftism, like scary big L leftism?
All sorts of things. Affirmative action, redistribution of wealth, taxing the productive, distributing it to those who are unproductive, all sorts of welfare, Social Security, the entire federal bureaucracy, all the New Deal stuff. I mean, since the 1930s, and I know you'll disagree with this, but the Roosevelt administration was very successful at sort of and of course it was totally like filled with communists and communist sympathizers, just as the civil rights movement was. It's been very successful at kind of marching down the field and achieving all of these victories while not explicitly identifying them as, communist victories. Merit is obviously antithetical to equality, but because Griggs and Duke Power, another Supreme Court decision, you cannot judge people based on their merit. You cannot give aptitude tests. You cannot give IQ tests. You cannot hire people based on merit. DEI, I mean, it would literally be like quicker to tell you things which have not been corrupted by the tentacles of the communist octopus than to describe the things that have, I think.
Oh, you mean like DEI, like getting people who have zero qualifications in Trump's cabinet, like running major like establishments in the U.S. government?
Well, one of the things that's funny about IQ tests is that they're better predictors of performance in a job than credentials or things like that, education even. So if Trump is hiring people who he knows are smart, I don't really care if they don't have credentials that are like satisfactory to his critics.
I think that the sort of idea of like making sure that like we audit the government and make sure that like our tax dollars are actually going to like where they're supposed to be going.
Yeah.
I think that I disagree with how it's been implemented because it's this sort of like shoot, aim, ask questions later.
Well, what are some examples of that? Because I would argue that, maybe if we were in an urgent situation like we are now, some of that firing from the hip would be necessary. But even like if you read on their website, the stuff that they're finding seems pretty like unambiguously like warranted to be cut. I'm not really seeing anything that looks like it could be maybe more in the middle. We need to investigate, find out. I'm seeing stuff like promoting atheism in Nepal, or these weird like subsidies or grants for research about like amphibian sexuality, things which like I personally don't want my tax dollars going towards. And yeah, it's being cut because that would be waste, fraud, or abuse, dealer's choice. Do you disagree with that? Would you want like things like that preserved, or how would you want to go about this as opposed to how like Elon's going about it?
Well, I think like when you have Elon, for example, like firing like an entire department of people who look after our nuclear stockpile and make sure that they're like maintained, like just like firing and then realizing, oh shit, we got rid of something actually important like a week later, and like having to rehire them all back. Like, I think that's like just, I don't know what you would call that other than incompetence.
Sure. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. I'd have to look into that. But yeah, hired him back, water under the bridge, life goes on.
Or I mean,
no harm,
like
no foul.
Or I mean, like one of the big things is that Doge, like one of the main things that they've done is they've gotten rid of like all of our soft power overseas.
You didn't just use the word soft power with me.
Yeah, actually, because like, people, like a bunch of like people on the right are saying like, oh, it's stupid, like, oh, we're giving like condoms to Lithuania or like some other like some African country or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's not like just, oh, like we're giving contraceptives to people. It's to curb the spread of HIV in other countries.
Why does that affect America though?
Because it gives us influence over those countries and gives us an like economic interest and like economic relationship with these countries.
And they wouldn't want to do business with us otherwise if it weren't for the free condoms? They're doing very well independently of America. No, they don't need us.
No, like I think like, I mean, you could argue like the cause of why these like countries are not doing so well. I would argue that it's mostly due to colonialism, but like in some African countries, like 4 out of 5 women are infected with HIV, which means that 4 out of 5 of the babies born there are also infected with HIV.
Yeah.
So they have like, there are all sorts of like medical and infrastructural problems that these countries have, and when you establish that sort of a relationship and helping these countries out and giving them the aid that they need, that does like increase your hegemonic power. Like whether you disagree with the idea
to do what though, because it hasn't actually worked at stopping AIDS. It hasn't worked in curbing fertility. I've heard that they don't even use the condoms for that. For some reason, you just like cannot get them to stop like having sex and raping and spreading HIV, and all of the aid that we've given them since the 60s, whether in terms of resources or dollars, hasn't really gone to building better civilizations. In fact, it's gone to just like making more people who then demand more resources. So what you're describing with like, oh, it increases dependence on America, I don't want that. I want that to go away. I want them to fend for themselves. It's not my concern. And so in terms of soft power, American soft power is not like, I don't know, giving condoms so you have to like us or something, or spreading feminism or gay stuff or LGBT. Like soft power is not that. I would not argue that like these countries are just, really sort of separate from us, but then we get inside and we make them more, sympathetic to American interests because of gay stuff or liberal stuff or whatever.
So do you think we should like just stop, like just cut all humanitarian aid abroad?
Quite a lot of it, yeah, because as we're finding out with USAID, it's just a big scam. And it's not actually, there's no record of where the dollars are going in many cases. And when they do go places, it's completely misappropriated. It's all a big scam. Even when you drop resources into many of these areas in Africa, they're immediately picked up by hostile groups. The whole thing is just like a big scam. And so I would support doing away with that. We have seen nothing in terms of the benefit to American taxpayers from these programs. So in terms of gutting waste, fraud, and abuse, I think that is an example of that. I'd want it to go away very quickly. it actually, too, domestically, talk about soft power, a lot of that money was going to domestic organizations to actually do what you're describing, influence the national conversation, promote liberal ideas, promote controlled opposition ideas on the right, some of these, magazines, publications, things like that. So I do get what you're saying, but yeah, I think that's completely a good idea on Doge's part, just getting rid of that stuff.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that we should be giving humanitarian aid to other countries. I think that bettering mankind as a whole is something that we ought to do.
What's funny is under colonialism, we actually had that. The countries were better. There were more paved roads, clean water. And as we've pulled out, as we have decolonized, it seems that those places have kind of returned to their pre-civilization state, which I lament. I like the flag. I like colonization. So,
ignoring all of the genocide and slavery that was done. But
genocide, like they were doing to themselves. We didn't invent slavery and genocide. I don't even know if you call it genocide, frankly. But no, they were at war. We brought peace. We brought stability to our empire. I just saw Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, sorry.
Don't make me kill you.
I appreciate you talking to us. Hope you have a fundamentally good weekend.
I'll try.
Let's go. All right, dude.
Donald Trump did 9/11.
No, that's not true.
He
That's
was
not
on
true.
that plane with Mark Wahlberg.
That's not true.
It is true. I watched him. He told me. First-hand witness. That's the best kind of witness.
I need a peer-reviewed study showing that Donald Trump did.
Are we not peers?
No, I don't go here. We just established that. I'm a stranger.
I'm here. I reviewed this study. These are my lovely topics. We watched the plane. I was there in New York. I watched it go down.
Yeah, I think we had fun with the libs here at UNT. It was more diplomatic. I will say it was a less animated reaction than our friends in North Carolina gave us. I'm scared. I don't want to debate this guy. He would epically dunk on me, and I can't have that. I'm scared. I'm terrified. That's exactly what I said before we were rolling. I'm going to deceptively edit this in post. So, but no, we had a good time. We like the libs. We have a good time.